Under the fading light of a dusty sunset, the small town of Laramie Hollow came alive with the buzz of laughter and the clinking of whiskey glasses. Inside the old saloon, men gathered around poker tables, their eyes sharp, hands tense, and fortunes on the line. Among them sat a quiet, lone cowboy named Jack Colter, a man with weathered hands, piercing blue eyes, and a heart that carried more scars than he ever let on. He wasn't there for trouble, nor for glory. He came for silence, for the rhythm of cards, and for the faint illusion that he still belonged somewhere. That night, though, fate had something else in mind for him. As the final game of the evening began, the stakes grew high. Around the table sat 5 men, a banker, a ranch owner, a drifter, a Chinese trader, and Jack himself. The trader, a sharp-eyed man with a silk vest and gold tooth, seemed desperate, sweating under the smoky lantern light. He had lost nearly everything: his money, his horses, even his wagon. The others mocked him mercilessly, but he refused to leave the table. Then, in a final desperate move, he placed something unexpected in the pot: 3 young Chinese women, sitting silently in the corner of the saloon, their faces pale and weary, their wrists bound with thin ropes. A murmur spread through the room. Even the bartender froze mid-pour. The trader spoke quickly, insisting they were indentured servants he had bought in San Francisco, working off debts. To him, they were property. To Jack, they were people, frightened, broken, and far from home. Jack's jaw tightened. "You can't put people in a pod like cattle," he muttered. The others laughed. "It's the man's right if he owns them," the banker sneered. "Either play or walk away." Jack stared at his cards. He didn't care for gambling with lives, but something deep inside him, the same part that had lost his wife and child years ago to sickness, wouldn't let him walk away. He pushed his last few coins forward. Deal. The game stretched into the night. With each turn, the air thickened with tension. The trader's hands shook. The drifter bluffed and lost. One by one, the others folded. In the end, it was just Jack and the trader. One final hand. The dealer slid out the last card. Jack's face remained stone still. The trader grinned, slamming his cards down. A full house. The crowd roared. But then, slow and calm, Jack laid his hand down, a straight flush. The room fell silent. He didn't cheer. He didn't gloat. He simply looked at the trader and said, "Untie them." The trader cursed in his native tongue but did as told. Jack took the 3 young women outside into the cold night. They stood under the open sky, their eyes darting in fear. One couldn't be older than 17, another maybe 20, and the third, barely more than a child. They didn't understand his words, but they understood his tone: gentle, steady, safe. "Don't be afraid," he said softly. "You're free now." They didn't answer, but one of them, the eldest, bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you." Jack led them back to his ranch, a lonely stretch of land miles outside of town. His home was small, built with rough hands and solitude. The first few days were silent. The girls didn't speak much, keeping close together like frightened birds. Jack didn't push them. He gave them space, gave them food, and gave them kindness. He fixed a small cabin near his barn for them to live in, showed them how to tend the garden, milk the cows, and cook on the old stove. Slowly, they began to smile. The youngest, May, would hum soft songs while working, her voice light as wind. The middle one, Lynn, proved strong-willed, learning how to ride a horse faster than Jack expected. The eldest, Wah, became the quiet heart of the group. Graceful and calm, often watching Jack as if trying to understand what kind of man he truly was. Weeks turned into months. The townsfolk whispered, of course. Some called him a fool for wasting food on foreign girls. Others called him a saint. But Jack didn't care. He'd spent too long living for other people's opinions. All he knew was that, for the first time in years, his ranch didn't feel empty anymore. There were small moments that changed everything, like the time Wah brought him tea in the morning, shyly smiling, or when Lynn insisted on helping him mend the fence despite the blisters on her hands. Once, May left a wildflower on his porch, her way of saying thank you without words. Each gesture, simple as it was, touched a part of him that he thought had died long ago. But peace never lasts long in the wild frontier. One afternoon, a group of men from the saloon came riding up, the trader among them, his pride wounded and his greed rekindled. He claimed Jack had cheated, demanded the girls be returned, and brought guns to make his point. Jack stepped off his porch, his revolver low at his side. "You lost fair and square," he said evenly. They ain't yours anymore. The traitor spat in the dirt. They belong to me. Before Jack could respond, Lynn stepped forward, trembling but defiant. We belong to no one, she shouted, her voice cutting through the wind. The men laughed cruelly, until they saw Jack's eyes. Cold, blue, unforgiving. He didn't want a fight, but he wasn't about to let them take the girls. The standoff lasted only moments before the traitor reached for his gun. Jack was faster. One shot cracked through the air. The traitor dropped, his pistol still half raised. The rest turned and fled. Afterward, Jack stood in silence, smoke curling from his barrel, chest rising and falling. Wa approached him slowly, tears in her eyes. She touched his hand, not out of fear, but gratitude. From that day on, no one came near his ranch again. Word spread that the lonely cowboy with the Chinese girls was a man not to be crossed. But those who truly knew him, or saw the way the girls laughed in the fields, knew the truth: he wasn't keeping them. He was giving them back their lives. As years passed, they became more like family than anything else. Wall learned English well enough to manage the small trading post Jack built near the road. Lynn worked the ranch with him, fearless and loyal, and May grew up with dreams of becoming a teacher. The bond between Jack and Wa deepened with time, not with passion or sudden romance, but with quiet respect, the kind that grows like roots beneath the soil. Sometimes, they'd sit together on the porch at dusk, watching the horizon bleed gold. She'd pour him tea, and he'd tell her stories about the stars, about the wife and child he once lost, and about how fate had brought them all together in a poker game he never meant to win. One evening, as the wind whispered through the grass, Wa said softly, "In my language, we say some people are like mountains, they stand so others can rest in their shadow. You are that mountain, Jack." He looked at her, eyes filled with something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Years later, when Jack Colter's time finally came, he passed quietly in his sleep. The girls, now women, buried him on the hill overlooking the ranch. They marked his grave with a simple wooden cross and a line Wa carved herself. He won us in a game of chance, but gave us back our lives with choice. And long after he was gone, travelers passing through Laramie Hollow would hear whispers of the lonely cowboy who once won 3 Chinese girls in a poker game, but instead of owning them, gave them a home, a family, and a reason to smile again. In a world that so often measured worth in gold and cards, Jack Colter measured it in kindness. And though his name faded from the history books, his story lived on in the hearts of those who knew that even in the roughest corners of the Wild West, compassion could still change everything. Because sometimes, the greatest gamble a man can make isn't with money, or land, or pride, but with his heart.